And welcome again to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And my name is Phil Thompson.
A little delay there. The heck?
Never know what we're going to do here. We just, all right. So nice to have you with us, Steve. And we are a tech company. If you're new to us, we're a tech company that helps churches and ministries use technology. One of our specialties is streaming video. We do mobile apps, we do content management, and we even do websites. I've been doing this now. How long have we been doing this, Steve? How long has the company been going?
I'm looking forward to our 20-year mark, which is still a couple of years away. So
yeah, well, 2001 is getting close, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, if you're watching us on video, we actually have a guest today, and our guest is Jonathan Smith. He's the Director of Technology at Faith Ministries in Lafayette, Indiana. Jonathan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. You are in a hotel room, and what did you tell us earlier, North Carolina?
I'm living the high life in Charlotte, North Carolina this week, yes.
Good deal. All right. Well, look, we're going to talk today a little bit about data mining. Data mining. Now, my father was a coal miner, but I don't think that's the kind of mining we're going to talk about today, are we?
No. I had a grandfather who was a coal miner too. But no, not today.
All right. So we're going to talk about should churches really engage in data mining, and if you're not sure what that is. Before we get into it, I just want to, this is your first time on the Church Solutions podcast. I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're over there at Faith Ministries. Who is Jonathan Smith, and what should we know about you?
Well, I'm a geek. Does that cover it?
Yeah, that should do pretty
good. Faith Ministries is in Lafayette, Indiana, which is where Purdue University is. And I went to Purdue. A little guy you might have heard of named Neil Armstrong went to Purdue. We're kind of a big deal there right now, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. I like to say Neil and I went to the same school, although we were separated by a few decades. I do like space and rockets, but that's a whole different story. I've been at Faith for a very long time, and part of the fun of being in a ministry for a long time at one location is you get to see how technology evolves, not just globally, but how you apply it to that one area. And obviously, streaming stuff, we weren't doing this 20 years ago. And you look at the kind of things that we can do now, it's just pretty cool to see where technology has taken us. And that's my passion, is to use technology to help impact the kingdom here on the earth.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I used to work in aerospace, and I hired several guys from Purdue that went to Purdue. So I've got to know them over the years. They've been some of my best friends. Yes, they actually, one of the guys, I hired him, and he worked for me for 12 years, and then he got promoted, and I worked for him for 7 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, good deal. So, all right, so let's talk about this data mining. So we have people that listen to this podcast, all 6 or 7 of them, that are involved. Some of them are pastors, some of them are, associates, some of them are volunteers for their churches. And so tell us a little bit about, what are we talking about here when we talk about data mining? And as a pastor or, a volunteer, somebody that's very much involved in their church, why should I even care about data mining?
Yeah, I think there's a couple reasons. One is it's got a very negative connotation. When you hear the word data mining in the news, it's usually not a good thing. It's somebody is turning you into a product to make money. Facebook is a great tool as an example, but you are not the customer, you are the product, and the mining is how they make money. They're not giving us Facebook because they're nice people with money in their pocket they want to give away. Churches sit on a lot of that same kind of data. And we got 2 problems with it. One is we got to keep it safe. The other is we should be using it to make our ministries more effective. And so when you talk about data mining, you're taking the data you're already collecting, you're already using, that you've already got, and figuring out a way to make that help you make better decisions so that you can impact the kingdom wherever you are, or you can better serve the people that you're serving because of that data that you have. And we just don't look at it very often. It just kind of sits there, and we don't say, hey, how can we do stuff better because of what we know?
Is there an example that you have something that, how would I use this data to benefit, someone at church, for example?
Yeah, I think the bigger thing that people talk about in churches right now is closing the back door, especially as churches get very, very large. It's not the 300 people that show up on Sunday morning necessarily that you can count from the pulpit and see who's coming and who's not coming. So as churches get larger, how do you make sure the people coming in are being served and then they're not slipping out the back door because they just get lost in the shuffle? Looking at your data can help you figure that out. Even if you're not taking attendance on every person that comes into your building, you're still collecting other data you could use to find out, are they still involved? Are they serving? Are they giving? How connected are they with our organization?
Yeah. One of the things my pastor has said for years, and Phil, you're aware of this, and maybe he's just echoing what other people have said, but the last thing to come for a person is their money when they're coming to church. They may come for a while, but the last thing they commit is their money, and the first thing they pull away is their money. So, he's really adamant about, let's track and make sure that, we got some committed people. Let's make sure they're to the point where they're tithing and committed to giving. And then he'll look at, there's some, who's a regular person, been attending for a long time, but they haven't given in a while. It's just a precursor to them leaving the church. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, or?
Absolutely. Not just that, but I mean, obviously money is an important part of giving to a church. Is how churches survive. But you also just have we're trying to do new things and reach new people, and we can't get anybody to show up and help us do that. The data mining can tell you, hey, look, there's some needs we can fill that we've got resources for that we're not plugging people in because we're not looking at that information.
All right. So are there things like, I need children's workers? Is that going into is there an example you might have for how I might use the data in my church to get some children workers involved?
Yeah, so at Faith, we collect a lot of information, and we are always asking people through various surveys and various forums what their interests are, what they believe their gifts are, how they can be connected. And so as you go to look at that data, when you say, well, we need nursery workers as an example, I would not be a good target for a nursery worker. I have 2 children. I love them, and that's the extent of my involvement with children right there. But there are people who are passionate about young folks, people who like to change diapers, people who like to serve in the nursery. So sometimes you can use the data to target the people you want to reach out to. So instead of sending me an email saying, hey, we need more people in the nursery, you're able to look at folks that have signed up and given their gifts and abilities and said, hey, we noticed you like young people. We're trying to staff the nursery better. Would you be willing to be involved in that?
So let me back up a little further here now. What's some practical ways to get this information? I mean, are we talking about just having people fill out a profile, or are there other ways to obtain information on people that would obviously benefit what the church is trying to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can be really creative with how you collect it. Some of it's just a straight out survey. Hey, thank you for being a part of our ministry. We'd like to know how we can get you connected. Here are some opportunities to serve. And then you can decide, do you collect gifts and abilities? Do you collect preferences? Do you collect, just here's a list of what we offer. Which ones do you want to be a part of? And you can gather that data in a lot of different fashions. The other part of it is we do it through some interviewing processes. So as people come in and join the church through whatever kind of process you might have to submit yourself to the authority of a local church, you're gathering data just by talking. And then the people gathering that data are putting it into a church management system or some kind of a database to collect it there. So you're gathering it. Some of it's formal, some of it's just organic.
So when you put it that way, it sounds a lot less, threatening maybe. Right. I mean, when I think of data stuff, I'm thinking of Facebook is lurking or Alexa or, my Google thing is listening to me. I mean, in some of my churches, we did basically a takeoff on Rick Warren's 301. We would actually do a class on discovering your gifts and your talents, right. and we would interview people. They'd fill out some information, they'd go to the class, obviously, and then we would interview them later to see how they could fit in the ministry. So that's kind of what you're talking about here when you talk about gathering data, right?
Exactly. You're just taking the stuff that you're already getting and saying, how can we apply it to what we do? And then not discounting what you're already sitting on. Right. You may be, especially when you talk about propensity to give, when you talk about propensity to serve, when you get into capital campaigns, stuff like that, all those things, I think we're sitting on information that pastors in seminary don't learn about data analytics. Right. I don't think that's a theology class they offer. No. But they're probably sitting on all that data. So is somebody helping them use it in a fashion where they can make better decisions? And then it's the church that goes to build a $100 million worship center and is shocked when they can't raise the $100 million.
Right.
You should have figured that out beforehand because of the information you already had.
Do you have some examples of churches that are using the data to kind of tune their operations? What I'm kind of envisioning here is, I got 4 years worth of data, and I kind of know where the highs and lows were my ministry over these past few years. Are there churches that are going in and say, let's go look back and look at the data and see what was going on during the troughs and what was going on at the peaks? Is that a way to, churches can look back and see, how they may better tune their ministry going forward? Or
yeah, churches change a lot. I mean, you all know that churches are not static. So a church from 5 years ago to a church from today, if you count average turnover, 30% of those folks weren't there 5 years ago.
Right.
Which constantly is changing. What are you trying to do, and who are the people that are involved? What are the gifts that you have? So I think it's good to keep collecting the information, but at the end of the day, you're taking data to create information to make decisions out of. And if you're not getting the data to get the information through your reporting mechanism or whatever that you use to turn that into information you can make decisions from, then you end up frozen in time. And so I think the churches that are doing it well, I like the notion of collecting the gifts information versus here's our 40 ministries, which one of these do you like?
Right.
Well, then I feel like I'm in the odd spot of which box do I have to check versus, hey, what are your gifts and abilities? And then how can we connect you to the things that we're doing, or how would that work in what we're in the community that we're trying to serve?
Right. One of the things that what gave birth to my involvement with creating technology in ministry was a thing called myflock.com. And what we had done was it was before Facebook and before MySpace. And we had everyone fill out a profile, and they would go through the initial idea behind it was an assimilation tool to allow people within the church to connect with each other. But we went through, and the profile exists today, where what are your spiritual gifts? What's your past history? What do you like doing? What's your favorite sport? What do you do in your leisure time? And so it's somewhat of a quite extensive profile that was done, and we really didn't have churches that were leveraging that too much at the time. It may have been a little before its time, but I would think that would have been a great resource for being able to gather some data. And you
make it less and less formal, because you can gather the data when you look at my parents, my grandparents, and my children. My grandparents are not going to go online and fill out a profile. Mm-hmm. They will answer those questions if somebody asks them over a cup of coffee. Right. So you've got multiple ways to collect that information, and so that you can use it to say, what do we have? What are the resources that our church has available?
So here's something that my church does. We have a leadership team meeting with once a month usually, and I'm just going to throw this out here and get your opinion on this, Jonathan. But we go over the data. We go over is very minimal, and we go over obviously average attendance for the month, year-to-date attendance average. We go back usually 2 or 3 years to compare to see where we're at as far as, okay, we're up an average of 5 people or whatever. We look at kids. What else do? We look at first-timers, people that we call them first-timers, but first-time guests, second-time guests, third-time guests. And so we use that data and we go over it in a leadership team meeting to kind of compare how things are going. Is that what you would think is at least a good starting point to use some data?
Absolutely. That is a great starting point, and most churches do that. I think the next thing is to go to the next level. So, okay, of those first timers, as you call them, whatever you call them, in your organization, okay, the first timers, what's the next step for them? How do you take a first timer and disciple them? How do you, to use a buzzword, how do you assimilate them into your ministry? And that data can help you go to the next level when you find out more about them and you're capturing that information. Again, it doesn't have to be a formal thing where, hey, please fill out a form. It can be the discipleship pastor took them out for coffee and learned this piece of information about them, learned what they like to do, and then somehow that gets captured so it can get used.
Yeah, that's a good.
Are there special tools that, if I've got my church management system going, are there special tools that I would need to employ to be able to discover this stuff, or is it just awareness and common sense with let's just, let's recognize this information we're getting and leverage it. Or are there tools out there?
Yeah, the challenge for us is the data comes in through so many different sources. So you have the formal sources, you have the card they might have filled out in the chair on Sunday morning, you have the email they put in or the form they filled out online, or you have, they met with a small groups leader and they told them a bunch of information. How do you get all that in one place? So obviously you want your CHMS to be able to handle some of that. Mm-hmm. The tool you mentioned earlier with MyFlock, that was a phenomenal tool that gave a structured approach to collecting the data for an organization that didn't want to figure out that structure on their own. We don't even know what to ask, so we're going to get a tool that helps us know what to ask.
Yeah, Steve's a billionaire too, by the way, because of that whole thing.
Oh, no kidding! Wow, Steve, I'd like to talk to you after the podcast.
Phil can mockingly say that. I mean, Phil, found you an interview and found you on this topic, and he knew that it would excite me a little bit because. Actually, in my former career, I was responsible. I worked in the aerospace business, and we worked in the estimating department, and we were charged with gathering tons and tons of data on past programs so we could, more accurately predict the future of, future costs of new programs. So we got exposed into this whole data. I mean, the big time data mining stuff that happens in the large corporations. We were amateurs, I think, but it was part of the things we were trying to discover as well was just being able to look at the data and find some clues for what made this program successful. Like, wow, it was all the brown-eyed program managers seem to be the hit, so we need to recruit brown-eyed program. No, anyway, we didn't find any of that kind of data, but that was the goal of it, was to try to find, how can we make this place better by looking at some of this data? So the church has a ton of data available.
We do.
Hey, I've got a question for you, Jonathan. What about the website? Can you do something with your church website, such as looking at maybe certain pages that people might be going to more than other pages? That would be maybe a part of this data thing, right?
Absolutely, and I don't want to get overly scary on folks with what you're collecting off your website. People go running, freaking out into the night now because we're talking about all the stuff we're collecting they don't know about. But yeah, you go to a church website, they're collecting analytics like you wouldn't believe. Most websites by default do that. It's just, are they using that to know who's going to what pages, what time are they going, where are they coming from? When you take that data and you layer in, you take a graph or a plot of all the addresses of all your first-time visitors for one Sunday, you can start making all kinds of correlations. And this is especially important for churches looking to start new campuses. Where are you going to start your campus? Is there a need in that area? And I would say there's a positive thing to going out and actually shaking hands and meeting people in your community where you want to go. But you can get a lot of first-time information on looking at some of that website traffic, because you're right, you're collecting a ton of data off your website.
So if I'm a pastor or like a leader in my church, how would I do that? I mean, do I have to have some kind of special script or something? Some kind of analytics that I need to add to my WordPress site? I mean, what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, getting the data can be the fun part. So you'd have to talk to your web team and who hosts your site, where is that data being housed, and how do you turn that data into information you can use? Because it's one thing to say the website had 1 million unique hits last month. It's another thing to say, where did they come from? How do I see those? What IP range did they come from? And so you're going to have to get some help to do a lot of that. You can't just, go to your WordPress site, click a button, and get a
no plugin for that, huh?
No.
The dominant force in that arena right now is Google Analytics. So
right.
You just employ Google Analytics, and just to not freak any of our listeners out, what Jonathan's talking about, we can learn a lot about. Visiting our website, a lot of people take that to, they can see me and they know what my favorite, ice cream flavor is, or it's
what color shirt I'm wearing right now.
Yeah, what color shirt? It's none of that. The closest thing you get is an IP address, and you may know within a half a mile or so where that IP address is located. but you don't know any personally. You don't know the person's name. You don't know. I don't want to freak anybody out. Drive everybody from church websites. Don't go to the church website again. They're going to call you.
Thanks to this podcast, church traffic plummets.
Yes.
So, what are the downsides? We got a few more minutes here. I mean, we're talking about the upside. We can learn about our people. Hopefully get them plugged into ministry, help them grow spiritually. But I mean, absolutely. What are the downsides?
Well, you got to protect it. I mean, I've written articles about the need for churches to secure our data. I'm convinced I could quit my job and retire comfortably hacking churches. And you say, well, that's obvious. We have giving data. The giving data is only part of it. It's this other information, the non-financial data we're talking about, that's also worth some money. So the downside is you got to protect everything you're keeping. And then you want to treat it with respect. You want to make sure that your people know, and anybody who's giving you data knows. Just like with donor intent, you want to make sure you've got the data intent down, and you're treating the data with respect, and you're caring for it, and you're not, walking around bragging about how many people in the church have brown eyes, because that's going to freak people out. To use the example from earlier.
I like that idea, actually.
Yeah. Are there churches that you see doing a better job than others with this, or just?
Oh yeah, and what's interesting is, in the corporate world, there are people called system analysts and data analysts. Most churches don't hire those positions. A discipleship pastor is told, here, figure this out, or you have an IT guy who knows how to write a few SQL scripts, and all of a sudden he's asked to create a report to validate some kind of a purpose. So I think churches struggle to do it well because we don't take the corporate example and say, how can we modify our processes and procedures and do it better? And then how do we get that data to the people that matter so that they can make the decisions? And then sometimes in churches too, we have a huge bias where we're going to make the data say what we want it to say. So we want to build a $100 million auditorium. Therefore, all the data says we should build a $100 million auditorium. I mean, that's the challenge that we face in churches as well.
Okay, good deal. All right, so this has been good. We need to have you back on again. We've been talking to Jonathan Smith. And Jonathan, how can people get a hold of you to send all their complaints and things,
I would have them send all the complaints to you, okay. And then you guys know. So the best way to fuss at me or to talk to me is on social media. I'm on Twitter at Jonathan E. Smith, or feel free to shoot me an email at jsmith@faithlafayette.org.
All right, sounds good. Awesome. Well, we need to have you on again. I'm excited about what you guys are doing over there in Lafayette, Indiana. Sounds like some great things are happening there, and it's good that you and Steve have connected, two fellow geeks.
So you're at a conference in North Carolina right now, right? You're speaking at the conference. What are you speaking on?
I'm doing a few sessions. One session is on a panel on how to work remotely.
Oh,
and then I've got 2 sessions on church IT operations for XPs and church business administrators.
Wow, good deal. Sounds great. It almost sounds like you know what you're doing.
I would not go that far.
Just wanted to clarify.
It's just an illusion.
Okay. Well, this has been good. And as Jonathan said, you can contact him if you just want to go straight to us. Send us an email at support@streamingchurch.tv. That's one of the things we do here. And if we can help your church in any way, we certainly would love to do that. That's why we do what we do here. It's not just a business. It's really our passion. It's our ministry. So we want to appreciate Jonathan. Thanks for being on with us today. We sure appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
All right, good. So he's Jonathan Smith. The other guy is Steve Lacy. I'm Phil Thompson. Thank you for spending some time with us today on the Church Solutions Podcast. Have a great day. We will catch you next time. Take care.